Over the last 20 years, our culture has grown obsessed with a darker version of Superman, a figure of ultimate power who no longer uses it for good. From Injustice and Brightburn to characters like Homelander and Omni-Man, we've watched variations of the Man of Steel twisted into tyrants, sociopaths, and cautionary tales. Even in mainstream adaptations like Zack Snyder's Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, we see a conflicted, brooding God who struggles to earn humanity's trust and often seems more like a threat than a symbol of hope. These stories aren't just fictional detours, they reflect something deeper. We've stopped believing that absolute power can exist without absolute corruption. What's unsettling is how much the evil Superman archetype echoes real-world politics, especially the rise of authoritarian strongmen marketed as saviors. The right wing in America has spent the last decade pushing a narrative that strength means domination, that compassion is weakness, and that the only way to protect the country is to crush opposition, whether it's immigrants, protesters, or the press. That's not Superman. That's a perversion of him. Superman doesn't impose control, he models restraint. He doesn't scream about loyalty, he earns trust through action. Take Action Comics number 775, for example. What's so funny about Truth, Justice, and the American Way, where Superman faces off against the brutal fascist elite? The world cheers for the violent team, but Superman makes a point. Might doesn't make right, and principles aren't weakness. He wins, not just with force, but by showing the moral cost of brutality. Yet the version of Superman many have embraced today is the opposite, a fantasy of unchecked power, a symbol of might makes right, wrapped in patriotism. It's not about hope anymore. It's about control. But the real Superman, the one I followed for decades, stands in direct opposition to that. He doesn't protect people by ruling over them. He protects them by believing in them. He listens before he acts. He holds back when it would be easier to lash out. He uses power not to elevate himself, but to lift others up. That's not weakness, it's principle. In Kingdom Come number 4, when the world teeters on the edge of annihilation, Superman is pushed to his breaking point. But in the end, he chooses humanity over godhood. He chooses humility. In All-Star Superman number 10, instead of punching a villain or saving a city, Superman notices a single girl contemplating suicide and tells her, "You're stronger than you think you are." That moment says more about him than any superpowered feat ever could. He represents an America that could be, not the one that treats power as entitlement and morality as optional. That's why he matters. That's why he's dangerous to those who want us to believe that only the ruthless survive. The cynical Superman didn't come from nowhere. He came from us, from an America that spent 2 decades watching its faith in institutions rot, from endless wars waged in the name of peace, from corporations with more rights than people, from leaders who treat laws like suggestions and cruelty like strength. It's no surprise our stories started to reflect that. We built fictional supermen in our image, angry, authoritarian, detached from the people they're supposed to protect. Injustice Gods Among Us is perhaps the clearest example. Superman loses Lois and their unborn child, and in that grief becomes a tyrant. It's a fascinating what if, but it reveals a cultural shift. We don't tell stories about how Superman resists power anymore. We tell stories about how quickly he gives into it. We call it realism, but it's actually resignation. We stopped asking, what if someone with power could be good? And started insisting, if someone has power, they must be bad. That shift doesn't just say something about Superman, it says something about us, about what we've come to expect, about what we've given up on. And yet, I still believe in him. I believe in the Superman who holds back, the one who could end any conflict in a second, but chooses diplomacy, compassion, and trust. I believe in the Superman who saves people quietly, who speaks kindly, who never forgets where he came from. That's the Superman I see in Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's All-Star Superman, where he rescues sun eaters and defends Earth with poetry and gentleness rather than fists. That's the Superman I remember in Hitman number 34, when he talks with Tommy Monahan about immigration, failure, and the burden of having power when you can't save everyone. He's not naive. He's not unrealistic. He knows how dark the world can be. He sees it every day. But he chooses to be better anyway. That's not fantasy. That's a challenge. The real Superman asks us to imagine a world where strength is used to protect, not dominate, where power doesn't corrupt because it's grounded in humility. And to me, that's not just a superhero story. That's the America I want to live in. One where we choose restraint over vengeance. One where we don't need fear to feel safe. One where doing the right thing is still the right thing, even when no one's watching. The Superman we embrace has everything about who we are and who we want to be. When we keep telling stories where Superman turns cruel, it's not because we're bold. It's because we've stopped believing that goodness can survive power. But that's exactly why the real Superman matters more than ever. He's not a fantasy. He's a moral counterweight to a world spinning off its axis. He reminds us that strength isn't about who can hit hardest. It's about who can stand firm without striking. He's not here to rule us. He's here to show us we can be better.